Sarah screamed in pain, but nothing hurt more than when the HOA president stood in my hospital room and told me to take off my gown or pay $5,000. I was 8 months pregnant in labor, shaking from contractions, and somehow that woman thought she had the right to humiliate me. That moment changed everything. It turned me from a terrified mother into someone who finally fought back. It started around 2 in the morning. I woke up to a sharp pain that made me gasp for air. "David," I whispered to my husband, shaking his arm. "Something's wrong." He sat up instantly, panic flashing in his eyes. We both knew this wasn't supposed to happen yet. My due date was still a month away, but my water had broken, our baby was coming ready or not. 10 minutes later we were speeding down the empty streets toward St. Mary's Hospital. I gripped his hand so tightly that my nails dug into his skin. Every contraction felt like fire tearing through my body. "Almost there," he said, his voice trembling. "Just hold on, honey." When we arrived, the hospital lights looked blindingly bright. A nurse rushed me into a wheelchair and everything blurred: the smell of antiseptic, the sound of monitors beeping, doctors talking fast. They got me into a delivery room. "You're doing great," the doctor said, trying to comfort me. "We'll have your baby here soon." And for a while that was all I could focus on: breathing, pushing, surviving. Until the door burst open. At first I thought it was another nurse, but when I saw who it was, my heart nearly stopped. Standing in the doorway in her gray suit and stiff posture was Margaret Thompson, the president of our neighborhood HOA. Behind her were Robert Kim, the pudgy treasurer who always followed her orders, and Linda Watson, her ever-smiling enforcer with a clipboard in hand. I blinked in disbelief. "What? What are you doing here?" I asked, clutching the blanket to my chest. "Mrs. Miller," Margaret said in that cold, clipped tone of hers, "we have urgent HOA business to discuss." David jumped up from his chair. "Are you out of your mind? She's in labor." But Margaret didn't even flinch. "Your property is in violation of Section 47B, she said calmly. "Your grass is over 5 inches tall." I actually thought I was hallucinating. My body was shaking from contractions, and this woman was lecturing me about lawn height in a hospital room. "This isn't the time," David shouted. "Get out!" But Margaret just raised her chin. "The rules don't stop for emergencies. You've already received 2 warnings. The doctor stepped in, furious. "Excuse me, who are you?" "You can't be in here. This is a delivery room. We're the Oakwood Heights HOA board," Margaret announced. Like that gave her power over life and death. "We're conducting official business." The doctor stared at her like she was insane. "You have 5 seconds to leave before I call security." But they didn't leave. Margaret took another step forward, her heels clicking on the tile floor. "Since Mrs. Miller has ignored our letters, we're implementing an immediate inspection." Inspection of what I cried. "This is a hospital. The resident," Margaret said smoothly, "is considered part of the property value of our community. We need to ensure she meets community standards." David's jaw dropped. "She's in labor, for God's sake." "Then she can pay the fine," Robert muttered. "It's already up to $2,000. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Between the pain, the fear, and the humiliation, I just wanted them gone. "Please, just leave. We can waive the fines," Margaret said, "if you comply with a brief inspection." I didn't even understand what she meant until she said it. "Remove your hospital gown." The room fell silent. The only sound was the heart monitor beeping beside me. "What did you just say?" David whispered. "We need to document that residents are maintaining appropriate standards," she said, glancing at her clipboard. I felt something inside me break. My voice came out small and shaking. "I'm not doing that." Margaret smiled. "Then the fines will continue to increase." I looked at David. His face was red with anger, but beneath that I saw something worse: helplessness. He'd been laid off 2 months earlier. We were already drowning in bills. I was scared. So scared that I actually thought about the money. "Fine," I whispered. "Just get it over with." "Sarah, no!" David shouted, but I was already trembling, my fingers untying the back of the gown. I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching it happen to someone else. I was 8 months pregnant, half naked in front of strangers, while Margaret circled me like a vulture. "Posture needs improvement," she said, writing something down. "Skin tone acceptable. Hair unkempt." Linda snapped photos with her phone. "For HOA records," she murmured. I couldn't stop crying. My body hurt, but what they were doing hurt so much worse. It wasn't physical, it was something deeper, a kind of shame that burns into your bones. The doctor finally lost it. "This is medical harassment. I'm calling security right now." He reached for the phone, but Margaret yanked the cord out of the wall. "This is legal HOA business." David lunged forward, grabbed Robert by the collar. "Get out!" Robert screamed. "This is assault. Call the police." "Let them!" David roared. "You'll all be arrested before this day's over." "But God help me." I begged him to stop. "Please, David, please just let them finish." It took another 10 minutes. 10 minutes of hell while they inspected, photographed, and humiliated me. When they finally said, "You passed the inspection," I collapsed back onto the bed, shaking uncontrollably. Margaret adjusted her suit jacket and said, "All fines waived. Congratulations on your upcoming birth." Then they turned to leave as if nothing had happened. But fate had other plans. Before they reached the door, we heard sirens wailing outside the hospital. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. The door burst open and suddenly 5 police officers filled the room. "Police! Nobody move!" one of them shouted. Margaret froze mid-step, clutching her clipboard. A woman in a dark suit stepped forward, badge flashing. "Detective Sarah Chin," she said. "Margaret Thompson, Robert Kim, Linda Watson. You're under arrest for sexual harassment, assault, extortion, and violation of patient rights." Margaret laughed like it was a bad joke. "This is a mistake. We're the HOA board." "Then you should know the law," the detective snapped, "because you just broke all of it." They tried to argue, to wave papers in the air, but the officers ignored them. The detective flipped through Margaret's clipboard, her face tightening with every note she read. "You wrote, and I quote, 'residence posture below standard, hair unkempt.' You documented your own crime." Robert tried to bolt for the hallway. 2 officers tackled him instantly. Linda burst into tears, saying, "We didn't know it was illegal," Margaret said. "Ignorance isn't an excuse," the detective said flatly. As they were led out in handcuffs, Margaret turned back to me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "The HOA will destroy you." But her words meant nothing anymore. For the first time that day, I felt safe. When the door closed behind them, I broke down completely. The detective sat beside my bed, her voice soft. "Mrs. Miller, I know this was traumatic, but we need to take your statement." Between contractions, I told her everything, how they'd followed me, fined me for every petty thing, and now this. David filled in when I couldn't speak. The detective's face grew darker with every detail. "They made her strip," David said quietly. "They took pictures." The doctor added, "I saw the photos. I called the police the moment they left." The detective nodded. "Good. That evidence will put them away for a long time." And then, my body took over. Another contraction hit stronger than ever. "We need to focus on the baby now," the doctor said. The detective squeezed my hand. "We'll handle the rest. You just bring your child into this world." 2 hours later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Despite everything, when I held her for the first time, I felt something pure, a fragile piece of hope in the middle of all that ugliness. David looked at her and whispered, "Hope. Let's name her Hope." And just like that, the name fit. The next morning, Detective Chin came back with updates. "We found hundreds of photos on their phones," she said. "Not just of you, of other residents too. They've been spying on the whole neighborhood." My blood ran cold. They were watching people through their windows from their yards, even children. Why, I asked. "Control," she said simply. "And money." They were pocketing the fines instead of turning them in. News spread fast. Reporters showed up outside the hospital. Neighbors we barely knew brought flowers and apologies. "We didn't know she was that bad." One woman said, crying, "We were all too scared to speak up." Months later came the trial. I sat in the courtroom with baby Hope in my arms while the prosecutor showed the jury those photos, me in that hospital room crying. The whole room went silent. The prosecutor said, "This is what happens when power goes unchecked." Margaret tried to argue that she'd misunderstood the HOA rules, that she thought she was doing her job. But when the jury saw the other evidence, the stolen money, the secret photos, the pattern of abuse, it was over. The verdict came fast. Guilty on all counts. 12 years in prison for Margaret, 8 for Robert, 5 for Linda. When the judge read the sentence, I didn't feel joy. I just felt peace. The kind that comes when something inside you finally stops bleeding. That day, as they led Margaret away in handcuffs, I didn't see a powerful woman anymore. I saw a bully stripped of her illusion of control, the same way she'd tried to strip me of my dignity. And in that moment, I realized something simple but true. No one, no title, no rule book gives anyone the right to make another person feel less than human.